Hi everyone, it's Gina from Gina K Designs. Welcome back to another video. Today's video is pre-recorded because Tom and I are celebrating our anniversary, but we'll be back again next week with more live videos. Today I'm going to show you a fun technique called ink swiping that creates a beautiful glowy look to flowers and leaves. I'm doing this with oranges and reds, but you can do this with all different color combinations. The stamp set that I'm using today is the Radiant Roses stamp set, and this is part of the Radiant Roses bundle that's available now at Gina K Designs. I'm using the solid images and the solid leaves from the set, and I've set them all up on the MISTI so that I can just do everything with just a couple passes. I'm starting out with a piece of white cardstock, and I'm just putting that white cardstock up in the corner of my MISTI and securing it with a magnet. Now the color that I'm going to use for my roses, I'm going to start with this Tangerine Twist. I don't want my roses to be orange, but I need a lighter color than red to create the glowy look. So by using Tangerine Twist, this is going to make my red roses glow. I'm going to stamp this 3 times because I don't want to put a lot of pressure on these stamps. There are a lot of fine lines, as you can see in those roses, and I don't want to squish the stamps and lose the detail. So if you don't want to squish the stamps and lose the detail, just do 2 or 3 coats to get a nice solid color. Some inks are a little thick for this technique, like pigment inks might glop up those fine lines. So make sure you stick with a nice crisp dye ink like this and just do a couple of layers to get the color nice and solid. Now once I'm done with that, I'm going to use a red velvet ink cube. Now, you're much better off with ink cubes for this part of the process because you can see what I'm doing. I'm dragging the ink from the edges inward, but I'm not going all the way to the center. So I'm creating kind of a mist of color that works its way toward the center but doesn't go all the way to the center. It's harder to do with a big ink pad, so I suggest picking up a couple of ink cubes if you don't have them for this technique. But can you see already that rose is starting to glow? And it doesn't look so orange anymore. Now it looks like a red rose, but it just glows because of that vibrant orange in the center. And you can see I'm doing a couple layers of this red so that it doesn't look too much like just a red ring around the outside. But can you see how that glows now compared to the other ones? So I'm going to do just 2 more of these roses. I decided not to do that last little one at the bottom because the layout that I'm going to do only really requires the 3. So again, I'm doing the same thing here with this side view rose, just kind of wisping that ink from the perimeter inward to create the glow. It's really interesting how just a tiny little bit of darker ink around the outside changes the look of the roses from orange roses to red roses. And it's almost like a similar effect that you would get by using colored pencils or Copic markers, where you want it to have that shading. But this is so much easier because all you have to do is just swipe some ink around the perimeter. Now I know this looks like I'm getting it all over, but I'm not. I'm being gentle and just getting it around the perimeter of that tiny rose. And you can see now they're all really starting to glow. And I'm going to hold this a little closer so you can see the difference between the one left behind. So take a look at how that glows. Isn't that beautiful? Try this with blues and purples and all different colors. Okay, so now we're going to do the leaves, and I'm inking these up with Jelly Bean Green. Now I do want 4 leaves, so I'm going to do this 3 times for here, and then I'm going to flip the cardstock over and do it 3 more times. But these leaves are quick and easy to do, and the swiping technique can actually be done on both leaves at the same time. These are very tiny images, and it's easy to do the ink swiping, and the ink won't dry onto that stamp because they're so small and it's so quick. So you can see I flipped the cardstock over, and now I'm inking them up a second time on the other side of the cardstock. This is a great mojo starter if you don't know what to do, but you just feel like getting inky. Grab some white scraps of cardstock and create a bunch of these glowy flowers and leaves. Die cut them and put them in a little box or a little drawer that you can use later whenever you need a fast card. And when your stamping friends look at this, they'll wonder how you got your flowers and leaves to glow. So now I'm using some fresh asparagus ink in an ink cube, and I'm swiping on each side of these leaves. Just a little swipe, and you can see this immediately in the first pass, how this just changes the look of these leaves. They have so much more depth now, and they're just beautiful. When I make cards with these kinds of inking techniques, I like to keep my card really simple behind it. I don't like to use colored cardstock when I do this because I want all of the color to be focused on these images. So I'll show you that in just a second. But just a few more swipes of this fresh asparagus ink cube, and then we'll be ready to die cut all of these pieces. Now, I'm not going to put you through all of the die cutting, but I am going to show you what I do for that little tiny rosebud at the top. It's really important that you die cut the way that I die cut these because it makes it easier to do the stem. So you can see this die has the stem, but I didn't stamp the stem yet. Don't stamp the stem until after you've die cut this piece. If you do it beforehand, you're not going to really know exactly where to stamp it, and it's going to be really difficult to line it up with the die if you just randomly stamp it somewhere. By die cutting it first, you'll know exactly where the green part is supposed to go, and you can cut it afterwards. Now here's a little tip for our embossing folders. Some embossing folders are directional, like these new hearts. And if you use our Master Layouts 2 die set, or you cut your cardstock down to 3.5 by 4 3/4 of an inch, you can use it in either orientation because our embossing folders are so big. They're 5 by 7 embossing folders. So I've cut my cardstock down to 3.5 by 4 3/4, and then I'm able to use it in either orientation to create a beautiful embossed heart pattern on the horizontal instead of the vertical. I just added 2 little shims there because I really wanted this embossing to be light, so I didn't use the embossing plate. But look how pretty this folder is. It's so delicate and just such a nice touch. All right, so now I'm going to stamp that stem. And you can see I can look right down on it and get it in the right spot. I'm using the fresh asparagus ink, and I'm going to ink that up and stamp it right underneath that bud. Excuse my head for getting in the way, but I do want to make sure I'm looking straight down over it so I get it in the right spot. You can see how easy that was to stamp. Would have been impossible to die cut it otherwise. So here are the pieces I'm going to use to assemble my card. I've got the double-stitched and single-stitched ovals die sets, and I've cut one of the medium double-stitched in white and one of the medium single-stitched in black, and I'm going to layer those together for that nice little shadow layer. And this is going to be a grounding panel for me. I'm mounting that heart pattern on top of a black panel, and then the whole thing is going to go onto my A2 white card base. Now I've assembled all of that together, and now I'm going to lay out my floral arrangement before I tape it down. I always like to look at the layout first before I commit to it. So I'm arranging these flowers onto this oval, and I'm telling you, every time I see these flowers, it's such a treat to the eye, the way that they just glow. And I'm going to put a couple leaves up here at the top and a couple leaves around the other rows facing downward a bit. And then I'm going to pop my greeting right on top of that, overlap it just a little bit. And then I'm going to tape all of that down. Now once everything is taped down, I'm going to add a few sequins, and the sequins I'm using are the disco ball sequins and the micro disco ball sequins. At this point, I've just mixed them all together because I like using a variety of sizes on my cards, and I love how these go from a fairly big sequin all the way down to just a tiny little micro size sequin. So mixing them together is fine. They're all the same color and they work beautifully together. So I've added 5 sequins onto this card, and you can see all of that sparkle and shine. So here's my finished card project. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed today's inking technique, and I hope you'll give this a try. Stay tuned to my channel for more 5-minute card videos, more Stampin' Chat Live videos, and some new foiling videos that I'm going to add this week. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you again real soon.